Hello, Lost Mountain teachers. Now, these sounds might be something that you're familiar with, but then again, they may be not familiar to you. I'm going to talk today about using two different tools in the classroom. So you get a choice between this or that, this Quizziz or that Kahoot. They're both very engaging games that you can use in your classroom. They're very fun, but they each have some pros and cons to them and some similarities and some differences. So, Kahoot, um, you as the teacher can host this on your computer. You can use your projector to project the questions and answers on your screen. And what your students do is they get a choice of answers. Well, not really a choice of answers. They get these symbols on their devices, and those symbols match the answer choices that are on the projected screen. In Quizziz, the students get everything on their own private devices, and you as the host, as a teacher, only use your computer to monitor real-time student results. So let's get into some pros and cons. So I'm going to start with Quizziz. Quizziz is a great tool. It's by far my favorite one that I use the most. I like it for the simple fact that students can work at their own pace. Students get to see the questions and answers on their screens. And so that allows them to read the question carefully and then look at the answers and not just see the question and then it immediately goes away like on Kahoot and then try to remember what that question was and answer those questions. It is very easy to create your quizzes. You can choose from multiple quizzes that are already created and you can edit them and change them to suit your own needs, or you can leave them as is. Great thing, you can assign it for homework and maybe not even take it for a grade, but use it as a practice skill at home preparing for a test. With Quizziz, the classroom does tend to be quieter. Students are much more engaged and focused on answering the questions than so much of that competitive nature that comes in with Kahoot. Now, there are cons to Quizziz as well. Students are answering questions, different questions at different times. That goes back to they can work at their own pace, but it doesn't allow for that isolated feedback that Kahoot does allow for. So it makes it really difficult to address questions that students get wrong right at that moment. It is easy because if they're using touchscreen devices for students to accidentally touch the wrong answer when they actually need the right answer, which can affect the data. And you're really limited to the question type. You can only have multiple choice, and it doesn't open up for open responses like mixing them up where they have to place things in correct order. So you're really limited to just recalled information. And so it does has its pros and its cons, but I do particularly like Quizziz. Now, as for Kahoot, there's pros and cons with this one as well. It's a shared experience in your class, like because it's teacher led and not as student directed as Quizziz. It does allow for that students to answer the questions at the same time and allows for that isolation of that content so that you can then go back and address those misconceptions that student has. Like Quizziz, there are millions of publicly created Kahoots out there. So you don't have to create your own, and so they're quick to easily embed into your lesson at the drop of a hat and get some of that discussion going in the classroom as maybe even like a ticket out of the door to see what kids know and what they don't know so that maybe you can redesign your lesson for the next day. This is really easy to use. It's very popular. It's been around since 2013. So students are likely very familiar with this. So that kind of stopping and pausing and giving them that feedback on how to maybe use that app is probably not necessary, and if you have to do it, it'll take you like 2 seconds and then you can jump into the lesson. With this one, I do like the fact that you can create different types of quizzes. You can have discussion questions. You can do the multiple choice. You can do jumbles where students have to put things in the correct order, which you cannot do with Quizziz. And so that's a really great feature for this one. But Kahoot, you cannot assign it as a homework situation like you can with Quizziz. So again, each has their pros and cons. Now, cons for Kahoot is content is not on the individual screens, which I don't particularly like because not all my students read at the same pace, and so it's really difficult for them to keep up with that. Just like Quizziz, it is very easy for students to mistakenly touch the wrong answer on their touch screens. And with, like I said, with the content not being on individual devices, students can feel left behind, which then makes them not want to participate, which then leads to off-task behavior, which can then cause behavior problems inside of the classroom. Each student cannot each student is very easily to see another student's answers because, like, if I'm sitting in the back of the room and everybody has their tablets up or their screens up, I can totally see the person in front of me and I can just easily copy their answers. So it does open up for a lot of missed data because students are not actually engaged as much as you want them to be, and they're relying on answers from a peer instead of themselves. These are some really great tools, and I like both of them. There's some similarities and there's some differences between them. Similarities, definitely they each have millions of quizzes that you can take from and use as your own, both in Kahoot and Quizziz. They're really easy to use in the classroom. The quizzes themselves to set up are super, super easy. They both have a data collection tool, but the negative about the data collection in both of these is it doesn't continue to catch their progress as they go because each of them doesn't require your students to set up an account and create one, which would then be able to track that data, because all they need on each of these is to just utilize the game code and then they can get into the system. Major differences are the fact that Quizziz allows for customizable feedback, which is the good thing because students do answer questions at different times. With the memes that they have, these little funny memes that you can create, with those memes you can create your own, and then when a student gets one wrong you can say, well, this answer is wrong, or this is why this should be the correct answer and not one of the other multiple choices. You can't do that with Kahoot, but you do have the option of stopping where you are and then talking to the whole class as to why maybe 80% of your students got this question wrong and go back and to review that particular concept. Those are some just basic similarities and differences. These definitely can be used in the classroom because I totally use them in mine. I've used them as introductory lessons to see what my kids may know as a preview. I've done them in the middle of lessons to say, we've talked about these concepts. Let's see what you've grasped, what you're recalling, what you're remembering. What do I need to go back and look at? And I've also used them as tickets out the door. I've used them as part of centers. There's different ways that you can use these in the classroom to keep your students engaged and focused on what you are learning. They're definitely beneficial to students in the fact that students don't just like to take a paper and pen quiz. We know kids are constantly on devices, they're constantly gaming, and this is one way to bring that type of technology into the classroom and engage them at their level, where they're at, and what they find most fun. And so you can use these to help for remediation after you've taken an assessment, to go back and review those concepts so that they can prepare to retake an assessment. You can use it as a review, you can use it as homework, you could use it as many different things inside the classroom and outside of the classroom to help your students where they are, and to even do it as an extension. Like, you can create one of these, a Kahoot or Quizziz, where you're asking questions that are DOK 4, where it brings those higher order thinking skills in, and they really have to dig in, and you can then do them as grouping and have them collaborate with each other so they benefit students in many different ways. These both are really interesting tools. I prefer Quizziz over Kahoot, but that's just preference. It's all up to you as to what works best for your class and what works best for your students as to which one that you should go with. But they're really great Web 202s, and I encourage you to give them both a try.